Hi there. Welcome back to Uniquely Useful with Tracy T. My name is Tracy Threlfall, and I am so happy and grateful that you have joined me today to talk about law of attraction, spiritual principles, and I am so pleased to have one of my closest friends join me on the program today. Steve and I have known each other for
Almost 13 years.
almost 13 years. He can tell you the month. When was it?
August 2009.
Just amazing that way. I can never remember that stuff. And it has been my privilege to witness the miraculous trajectory of Steve's life. When we met, he had just lost somebody very close to him. Was about to lose somebody very close to him, and was at a very low point in his life. And I'm going to let him tell you about his process, his journey. But I do want to introduce him. Steve is a recovering alcoholic whose experience is that his alcoholism is rooted in his thinking. And that's what we talk about. What I think plus what I feel is what I creates the world around me. Steve's cure then has been to transform his thinking. I have been a witness to that. It's been miraculous. Because we create what we think about, this transformation naturally resulted in a transformed life in all areas, but especially relationships and finances. Steve is a chief HR officer in his professional life, a property owner, a world traveler, and a travel blogger. His website is simply Steve Haas, and that's HAAS.us, and we will put that address in the comments below, where he shares thoughts about recovery, spirituality, and especially travel adventures. Steve, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Tracy.
I'm so glad that he said he would do it. So, Steve, we're going to talk about the law of attraction today. Tell me about that.
Well, it's kind of funny, and in some level, I didn't really get deep into it until the pandemic, but on other levels, I've been practicing it for about 20 years, where I came across, as you're now familiar with, Abraham Hicks, sometime in the couple of decades ago, and all I knew about them really was that I got a daily meditation from them. Mm-hmm. And for years, that's really all that it was, but that meditation really fit well with the other spiritual worldviews that I had been studying, whether it was Neil Donald Walsh, Carolyn Mace, Ernest Holmes, Emmett Fox, where all of that is coming from this place of, what are you thinking about? And, I can still hear, we've joked about this. I've listened to the Conversations with God audiobook many, many times. It's a brilliant reading by Ed Asner and Ellen Burstyn. Mm-hmm. And I can, still hear Ellen in my head saying, you think these thoughts have no power. You think these thoughts mean nothing. You misunderstand your power, right? And mm-hmm. And as I've been, working on my own recovery, and especially in relationships and especially in jobs, I have, a lot of thinking that doesn't serve me. and I make up stories. Something happens, I make up a story about it. I interact with the people as if that story is true. They have no idea what's happening. And it's all stuff I made up, right? And it's all stuff that I made up. And so once we talk in recovery circles, we talk a lot about meditation. And I hear people say often, I can't meditate because I can't quiet my mind. And I always go, that's not the point. Like, to me, it's never been the point. What I've always understood and what I practice about meditation is it's about monitoring my thinking and making conscious choices about whether or not that thinking is serving me. And if it's not, shifting to something that does. And then being able, so I have a pretty decent discipline. It's not perfect, but a pretty decent discipline about starting, at some point in my morning before I get into my day, even if it's just 5 minutes, having a moment to get that alignment. And most importantly, to take that alignment with me during the day so that I can call on it in moments where I'm having an interaction at work there's a particularly irritating person in front of me, and in my head, I have to very, very quickly do the math on get past the first thought and go to the next thought, right? Get past the irritation, come from love. Get past the irritation, come from love. And it's a practice and it's a discipline. And sometimes they do well with it and sometimes they don't. But the more I practice it, the better life gets. And that's the short version, I guess.
One of my favorite interactions that you and I had, and I have carried this into every interaction since then. I was sharing with Steve a story about my mother. Because if it's not one thing, it's your mother. And I was carrying on with Steve, and he looked at me, and he does this thing with his eyebrow. You may see it. You may see it today, or you may not. But he cocked an eyebrow at me, and he said, "Is that true? Or is that a story you're telling yourself about it?" And you could have dumped a bucket of ice water on me and I would not have been more shocked. And one of the things that you and I talk about a lot is creating stories in our head. And is that true? And I guess the way that we determine if it's true or not is how it makes us feel inside.
Yeah.
And if I am having a thought and I have a twist in my gut, then that tells me that that is not coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of
something else, fear probably. And when the pandemic hit, I know it was so rough for so many people, and I always think how grateful I am that I was sort of perfectly situated to make it my own. I mean, I clearly remember this moment. It was a Saturday, March 14th, 10:30 a.m., and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Wow, isolation is suddenly the responsible thing to do. And I was giddy. I was just giddy about it.
Yes,
and
a fellow introvert.
Yes, and I dove into all of these basics that I had in early recovery around prayer and meditation and yoga and eating well. And the first 60 days of the pandemic, I was in the best mental space I'd ever been in my life. And I know that was not everybody's experience, but it was mine. And somewhere in there, I came across, a different version of Abraham Hicks and thought, why haven't I ever studied this? So I bought a book. And I've spent a good portion of the last 2 years where that's been my material in the morning. And there's been a lot of super useful things that have came out of that. But one of the best ones was that if I am feeling a negative thought, this was transformative. If I am feeling a negative thought, all that means is I am thinking about something differently than my higher power is thinking about it. And it was like, oh my God, is it really that simple? And then what's the better thought? And again, Ellen Burstyn in my head saying, think again, think again, think again. You're thinking about it wrong. God is all love. God wants the best for you. And it's all there. It's all available to you. You just have to think about it in the right way. And so and so just that thought is like, it really got me in touch with a tool. Like, where in my head I can go, oh, I'm feeling something. Why? Because I'm thinking about something wrong. And I had learned this not that simply, but I remember at about 5 years sober, really tuning into this idea of, oh, I can change my feelings based on how I think about something. And that was miraculous, because I came into recovery a hostage to my emotions. I really, really believed that my emotions were real. They were everything, and and you were responsible for them, right? And it was, and that was all, And so one of the early lessons in recovery was how often I played the victim card. And once I realized that and started, doing some work around that initial realization that I could, two things. One, I could change the way I felt about something by changing the way I think about it. And usually that path was coming out of self-centeredness. That usually when I'm having a self-centered thought about something, I'm feeling like crap. And when I can shift to something that's a higher perspective, the feeling goes away. And so that concept started pretty early in recovery. And so I've been playing with it ever since.
One of the things that I have really appreciated about the Abraham Hicks teaching, And my husband and I are also using that as part of our daily readings in the morning. Is just exactly like you. I always felt that I was a victim of my emotions because they were so powerful. We're very sensitive people, and my emotions are overwhelming. And the gift that I received from that was to catch it before it got out of hand. Like every emotion starts with a thought. That it is an internal guidance system. It is not, it is a result. It is not cause, it's effect.
Yes.
And learning that now, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right.
And, you know, we're here to talk about the fact that this is a journey, that this is a work in progress. But this is what I love so much about Steve, because, again, the purpose of this program was to take you on a real law of attraction journey with a real person, not a celebrity, although that's not off the table. Author, host, speaker. However, witnessing another one of the most real, authentic people I know, and that's, the gift of this friendship that I've had with Steve over the years, is his complete authenticity with me. Like, always being willing to share what's going on with you, whether it is a good thing, a bad thing. We have walked together through many job changes, a few relationship changes. We have both had dark nights of the soul. Steve was one of the people, when I went through a couple of particularly bad patches in my life, never abandoned me, not for a second, and continually treated me just this exact same way that he treats me now. I hope you know how grateful I am for that. So Steve, talk to me about the transformation and about relationships. Talk a little bit about your relationship journey, and tell our audience where you're at with that today.
So let's see how to do a short version of this. So I do think there's some truth to people come into my life based on what I need in that moment, right? And that in and of itself is attraction. And even if somebody has come into my life that's particularly irritating, there's something about that I need to learn, even if it's, they're reflecting something that I do or something like that. But, in terms of relationships, I don't want to go into a lot of detail about this, but I will say, I'm going to sort of jump to the current one because
that's a good one.
It's been by far he probably won't watch this, so I can say whatever I want.
Exactly.
It's been by far the best one that I've had, and it's my fourth long-term relationship. I got the gender right this time, and I got. I decided 2 months into the pandemic, after being single again for 2 years, that it's time to be in a relationship again, which is an odd time to decide that when you're in lockdown. But, you can do a lot of dates outside, and I managed to make it work. But the best decision that I made in that time was I'm not going to settle. Was that when I looked at my prior relationships and I did the sort of inventory around what are the major areas I want compatibility with. And I want compatibility intellectually, from a sense of humor perspective, emotionally, spiritually, financially, and sexually. Is that enough? That's all of them, right? Those are the arenas. And
whole package.
And I had always compromised on one or usually more of those areas, different ones every time, right? When I think of the 3 relationships, each time I compromised in a different place every time. And I just thought, I ain't doing that again. I'm just not going to do that again. I'm happy being single. I can travel by myself. I can go to the movies by myself. In fact, I love going to the movies by myself, right? There's a lot of things. I'm not one of those people that lets being single get in the way of having a rich life. I'm going to do that anyway. And if somebody wants to come along for the ride, great. And if not, oh well, I'm still going to be happy. But I also know the value of a relationship from a spiritual growth perspective, and that ultimately I like there's a particular interaction that happens in a long-term relationship that spurns spiritual growth in a way that you don't get in any other way. And I wanted it from that and a bunch of other perspectives, but I thought, dang it, I'm not settling this time. And I didn't. And as you know, it's been amazing, right? I mean, this house that he's in Paris as we speak, and I'm joining him in 3 weeks just because we can. You know that part, right? And, so it's manifested in a way that, we talk in recovery about catapulted into a fourth dimension. And, I felt like that in the last relationship, and here I am again, like it's that times 10, right? Because, I learned a lot in the relationship prior, especially around the most important thing I learned was that I needed somebody like the area that I compromised the most on in the last relationship was spiritual compatibility. And I didn't do that this time. And so, finding somebody who was also in recovery, who could talk easily about a higher power, who understood the importance of how he carries himself and how he interacts with other people, and all of that, and is so naturally giving, has been amazing. And it's this particular manifestation is like a combination of the prior two, right? It's the best of both worlds. I get all of the stability and common sense and seriousness that I got out of the relationship prior to this, with all of the playfulness and the silliness and the fun that I had in the first relationship. And it's been, and I think it came because of decisions that I made, right? That it came from those decisions around, this is what I want and I'm not going to settle.
One of the things that we've talked about a lot in our law of attraction practice, in powerful manifestation, is the art of gratitude. But you also brought to my attention, and Steve was the one who introduced me to Abraham Hicks, but you also talk a lot about appreciation.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you could give us just a couple of minutes on appreciation, because I know for me, I've been in a long-term relationship now for 22 years. As you know better than anyone, we've definitely had some rough patches, but we have always worked through it. And I think that appreciation, not taking a relationship for granted, is a big part of that. What are your thoughts?
So I'll back into that a little bit by talking a little bit about gratitude. So I've said for a long time, if I were going to build a spiritual program out of one word, it would be gratitude. Like, that's been the basis of so much of what I've done. And I'll get, one of my favorite teachers is Carolyn Mason. One of my favorite things that I learned from her is this idea that gratitude on a full stomach doesn't count, right? That it's really, really easy to be grateful when everything is going your way, that we develop spiritual muscles when we learn to bring gratitude to our grief, to our poverty, to our joblessness, to our loss, whatever it is. And that's all about how you think about it, right? And I have no better example of that than when Michael died, right? And I have this whole thing on my blog about gratitude for grief and how I came from that, because it was, or how I came to that idea, because it was this merging of two ideas, right? One being grateful, but two, just the concept of relativity. We live in a relative world, and my favorite example was, if I was happy all the time, I wouldn't know it, right? Like, you have to have this contrast, to use Esther's language. You have to have this contrast in order to appreciate or experience anything. If it was 72 degrees all the time, you wouldn't know it. Like, it would be the fish in water going, what water, right?
I would still appreciate it, though.
Not if you didn't understand hot and cold, right? So at any rate, so Michael's death, really, it took me a year to get there, but getting to that area of realizing that, the only reason I'm experiencing grief is because I have love, right? And so they're going to go together. So choose which one do you want, right? And so that was a huge kind of transformative moment for me that I've carried with me for 12 years now. And but so I've done the gratitude thing a lot, and it wasn't really until I started reading the Abraham Hicks material that I got turned on to this idea of appreciation. And it's hard to put into words. It's just a little bit different. I feel about it differently. That's the only way I can really explain it. That there is a vibration in me that feels different when I'm in appreciation than when I'm simply in gratitude. It's just sort of a deeper level, and it's also easy. It's easier somehow. It's easy. It's an easier expression. It's an easier expression than just gratitude, and I can't quite put that into words either. And there's been one of the most fascinating things to watch is that once I started playing with that, mid to late 2020, things started changing where not only was I very consciously, I'll use my job at the time as an example, it's like, well, yeah, I know I don't want to retire from here, but what I can appreciate about this job is that it's giving me skills. It was giving me challenges in all different kind of areas that I knew would serve me well going forward. So I just go into work every day knowing that was I'm just going to appreciate it for what it is at the moment. And then suddenly I get a relationship where I'm feeling appreciated in ways that I've never been appreciated by anyone in a relationship before. And 4 months later, I get this job literally handed to me out of nowhere, where I'm doing exactly the same thing.
That's what we're talking about.
I'm doing exactly the same thing that I've done in every other job I've ever been in, but feeling appreciated in ways that I never have. And so I learned that me being more appreciative actually attracted more appreciation, which was completely unexpected, but kind of cool. And
so the point of that is that it starts with me.
Absolutely.
So we show the appreciation, we achieve that shift in every other area of our life.
Yeah.
And it has been remarkable to witness that. Now, we have also talked about finance. Steve lives in a beautiful craftsman home in Midtown Sacramento. He owns property. He has a pretty sizable bank account. And this was not always the case for Steve. I've personally witnessed it. So talk to me a little bit about how appreciation and gratitude have affected your financial success, or what do you attribute to your shift in thinking around finance?
So you asked me that question several months ago, and I had to really, really think about it, because I thought, what's interesting to me about the question is that was never the goal. I've never consciously thought about my financial condition getting better. That's never actually been something I quote worked on. What I have worked on, and I do give my prior relationship credit for this. I always joke about in my prior relationship, my life improved in the 3 F's: food, fitness, and finance. Right? He was so disciplined about those things that I got to practice it on levels that I hadn't practiced it before. And so, that relationship, for sure, and he gets a ton of credit for this, facilitated the baseline of that financial success, for sure. But it was also a shift in my thinking, right? A shift in my thinking, and it was thinking, he has these very clear ideas around. It doesn't matter how much money you make, you live below your means, right? And so here was a man who, in his 40s, had never paid credit card interest in his entire life, because why would you do that, right? It's irrational to him, right? And as those of you that have met him know, he's the most rational person on the planet. But there was some value to adopting some of that thinking, and So at any rate, it was really more of a shift in thinking than anything about how I live day to day and what's valuable to me and what I spend money on. And that first taste that I got of, I sold, I moved in with him. We were living in his beautiful house in Davis. I sold the house I had in Natomas. A couple of years into it, I held on to it for a little while, but that, like, transactionally, that was the moment that everything shifted, because how old was I at the time? 50? I was 50 years old, and for the very first time since I was 18, I had zero debt. No credit card debt, no house debt, paid off my car. That was it. I had no debt in my name. And my friend Art, and I talk about this all the time, there was a freedom that I experienced in that moment that I had never experienced before. And I thought, and that's the feeling, right? That's the feeling. And I thought, okay, I want to keep this. I want to keep this. I want to keep this feeling. I don't ever want that feeling of freedom to go away. And whether it's in finances or relationships or jobs, that's often how I know whether or not I'm in the right place, is how much freedom I'm experiencing, because that's how I want to live my life. And yeah, there's always crap that we have to put up with and blah blah blah. But on a day-to-day basis, from a big picture perspective, that is a feeling that I reach for. And if the relationship or the job isn't facilitating that, then I know it's time to make a change.
So, Steve, we've covered a lot of ground today. As we wrap up our program, what would you say to somebody who is starting out in a law of attraction journey, somebody who has reached a point in their life, much like where I was, right before I made the shift back into changing my focus, turning my focus onto abundance instead of lack, love instead of fear, to our audience who are just at a low point in their life, or even at a regular point in their life, and they want to create the life of their dreams, what would you say the key areas to focus on would be?
So I've thought about this a lot since you asked me that one night at dinner, and it's the same answer, I think, that I gave you then, which is, and I believe this to my core, I'm not special. I don't do anything that anybody couldn't do.
I disagree, but okay.
The thing that I feel I do differently from most, and that I think is useful to me in producing some of these results, is that I'm relentless about it. That I'm very, very disciplined about the work. And the work is, it's what I said in the intro, but I wrote that for you. The work is in transforming my thinking. And so it requires a fair amount of consciousness to be thinking about what you think about. And deciding in the moment whether or not that's a useful thought, and how's that going to translate in that interaction you're having with that human being at that moment. It takes some consciousness to do that. And so where the prayer and meditation comes in the morning is, all of that becomes much easier if I get that alignment first thing. And if I get that alignment first thing around, I'm going to set out my day-to-day to come from love, to try to be useful to others, to keep the negative thinking away. Why? Because, look at my life. Everything works out in the end, right?
Everything. We're not even close to the end.
Everything works out in the end. I don't have anything to worry about. I am always taken care of. Choose love, right? Right. I mean, I've been rereading some of the Course in Miracles stuff here lately, and right, we've joked about this. You got two choices: fear or love. Which one is it? Right? And if you just choose love every time, it works out for you. But that, if the mind, I might end with this if I can. If the mind, if we haven't disciplined our mind to do that, then the work becomes harder. I was cleaning some notes off my phone the other day, And I came across something that I thought, oh my God. So I wrote this down this is the early part of the pandemic, April 4th of 2020. And I was watching, I'd said earlier, I really dove into a lot of basic work. And I came across, I don't know, something on Netflix about, I can't say his name, but it's one of the gurus from, one of the famous gurus from India, Yogananda Paramasva or something like that. But I was so struck by this because it's so connected to the work I've done. He says, in America, everybody is busy. If you keep on running after too many hobbies, you won't have any time left for bliss. Will is that which changes thought into energy. And I love that idea. And so that's a lot of what I'm doing in my morning meditation, is realizing that my thinking will create my energy. But if my thinking is bad, my energy is going to get drained. So what's the thinking that I need to have to create more energy so I can get through my day, or to create the energy to get me through my day? But here is the thing that I love the most. Repeated performance of an action creates a mental blueprint, causing the formation of subtle electrical pathways in the brain, somewhat like the grooves in a phonograph record. Your life follows the grooves that you yourself have created in the brain. And I thought, oh, that's it. That's what's happened. Is because I've been disciplined about this, I've literally been able to rewire my head. Where, and I'm still perfect, right? The record still skips, but that's how it feels a lot of the time when I compare my thinking today to who I was in 1990. Holy shit! Can I say that?
Yes.
Like, it's just been a complete.
This is an adult program.
It's just, but that comes just because I've been dedicated to the work, because I wanted the transformation. I came in a very, very broken, shallow, boring, isolated person, and because I had tried to quit drinking on my own for a full year before I got sober, when I came in, I was literally raising the white flag, and I was in it for nothing less than complete transformation, because that's just where my life was at the moment. It's like, and everything needs to change, and it has, in ways I could never have imagined. But I somewhere in the process, I early on, clasped onto step 11 and sought through prayer and meditation. And that was the core part of my early recovery, and I've been seeking ever since. And I think it's that discipline, to go back to your question, it's the answer nobody wants to hear. It's daily work. It's daily work. It's daily discipline. But if you do it, you'll get results. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But you have to be patient with it, because it's not overnight.
It is not overnight, and it is simple but not easy.
Yeah.
But for those of us who've come to the point that Steve talks about, we come to a place where there is no choice. I can take that 15 to 20 minutes in the morning, and I can align my thinking with Source like Steve talked about, or I can just be a runaway train through my day. One of our favorite recovery speakers used to talk about, upon awakening, he would open up his eyes and there would be vultures on the headboard. Big, dusty, black wing vultures. And they would say things like, "You didn't get nearly enough sleep last night, and you're going to be crap at work today. And they don't like you there anyway. You're probably going to get fired, so you won't have money to pay your bills." And this sort of habitual negative thinking, and it just goes downhill from there. And what I found now, upon awakening, where I might try to find that problem like a tongue on a sore tooth, I can catch that and say, what is it that you want? I want a good day. I want it to be filled with love and friendships and success, finding my passion, expressing my joy, and doing it with people. I just have to do a quick second on this. I had this miraculous experience last weekend.
Miraculous is a big word.
It is a big. It was big for me. We went to go see Wicked.
And we still need to debrief that. But anyway.
We do. That's a whole nother dinner. But, Steve and I sat there together along with my husband, his partner, some of our friends, and we saw this amazing musical and cried through the whole thing.
Yes.
There was sparkle and light and streamers that shot out into the audience covering us. We just felt so engaged and part of that show. And I sat there with you, with my husband, and I thought to myself, in that moment, I didn't miss this. I was able to experience it. I was able to feel it. It was one of the most powerful spiritual experiences, just, buying a couple of theater tickets on a Sunday afternoon, which we never go out on, with a bunch of people because I hate crowd things. But I don't. Is that true, or a story you tell yourself?
Yeah.
And so I am so happy and grateful for everything that you bring to my life. You have taught me gratitude. You've taught me the difference, the subtle shift between gratitude and appreciation. That's my standard thing now with checkers in the grocery line or waiters or anybody that I come in contact. I tell them, I appreciate you, because I do. I appreciate you joining us on the program today. And if you got anything of value out of this program, please feel free to like and subscribe, share it with your friends. Until the next time, this was Steve Haas. I'm Tracy Threlfall, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you.
Anything for you.